three-headed frogs, or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes. Good morning, Toledo. And good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here live in studio with my co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
And we are prepared to give you an hour of amazing radio that we call For a Green Future.
I'm working on saying my name and sounding really excited.
I think it was working. Yeah, that was good. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the happiness of your kids and your family and your friends and all the little critters and your pets and everything around you. Because, like it or not, we are all mixed up in one big ball here that we call the planet Earth.
Indeed.
So, coming in today, we had a bit of a rain, well, quite a bit of rain. In fact, if you live in Northwest Ohio, just, shout out. There's a lot of standing water, a lot of places where you're just driving along and all of a sudden there's water, you're putting up a wake on either side and spraying water all over the place.
Because we're actually basically a swamp.
Right. So drive careful, and if you don't need to drive, don't drive. And that's always a good rule, because every time you get in that internal combustion engine car, you're putting a little bit more carbon up in the air. And that is not good. Not good for the environment at all. In fact, we have some news about that after the break. So actually, this is a good time to review the whole show. We had, hopefully what we're having here today is two guests, not one, but two. We had arranged with Colette Atkins from Center for Biological Diversity to call in, and she's going to give us an update on the whole effort to exterminate the wolf situation. And we have a recorded interview with a fella named Joseph Peltier. And Joseph is on the front lines in Minnesota in the battle against Line 3, Enbridge Line 3. And so he has some pretty exciting, dramatic stuff to talk about. So we hopefully will have both a live and a recorded interview, which is great, but it also means less us. I'm sorry. But
Darn, everyone's going to cry big salty tears now.
Yeah. So first we'll hear from Leonard Peltier, then we'll hear, at the break, we'll hear from our wonderful, fantastic...
Joseph.
Oh, Joseph, thank you. Ooh, yes. And then we'll hear from our fantastic sponsors at the bottom of the hour. And then Rebecca will enlighten us about an interesting plant, the mulberry.
Yippers.
Yeah, it's lots of them around this year. It's a big year for mulberries. Then we'll hear, hopefully, from Colette Atkins. Then on to some ecological news. And hopefully at some point during this hour, any point during this hour, we'll hear from you. You can call in at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. Or you can send us a text anytime during the show at 419-973-5841. That's 419-973-5841. We love to hear from you because, that means somebody's listening.
Yeah.
And it's important that people hear what we have to say here because a lot of people aren't going to get some of this information any other way. And, this is one reason we created this show is because there's a lot of really vital, important ecological news that has direct impact on your quality of life that if you just watch the regular news, the mainstream media, you're never going to hear about it. You're just going to feel the effects. And I have to say I couldn't help, as we were driving in today, I couldn't help think about, with all this rain and all the rain that's been happening in places like Detroit and I couldn't help but think about a few years ago when we had so much rain that the farmers actually weren't able to plant. This was just 2 years ago that this happened. And one of the effects of global warming, and remember, we always call it global warming here. We never stopped calling it global warming on For a Green Future. But one of the main effects is unpredictable weather. So it's not just straight turn up the heat like in an oven. There's ups and there's downs. You know, this we really have to get moving on this, people, because the governments just aren't doing it for us. So we got to do what we can as a group individually to reduce as much carbon as possible. And so part of that process is to stop and to block new fossil fuel infrastructure. Because if you spend tens of billions of dollars building a new pipeline, putting in new gas wells, putting in oil derricks, you know, the more you do that, the harder it is for all of us to get off of carbon, to stop putting carbon in the air. China has 25 gigawatts of new coal plants planned in the next couple of years.
No, China.
Yeah, I know. And you know, China right now is actually the largest emitter in the world. They have by far surpassed the United States. But if you bring that up, like on Facebook or something, thousands of trolls immediately pop on there and say, "Oh no, but per capita, China's not."
Well, that's because they have millions of people.
Well, yeah, exactly. they have a billion people, A, and B, the atmosphere doesn't care what your per capita rate is.
No.
All it cares about is how much carbon is going in the air.
True.
And so China is putting more than anybody else, and they've got plans to almost double what they're doing now. So what if it changes the per capita? So, you know,
solar and wind, China, you can do it.
Yeah, and they are doing solar and wind to give them credit. They are doing more wind than anybody else, and they're doing tons of solar. And, you know, the reason solar is so affordable now is because of the Chinese manufacturing of solar panels. You know, these are good things, but you can't ignore the bad things. You know, you have to call them out on the stuff that they're doing wrong, just like you call out the U.S. on the stuff it's doing wrong. And one of the things the U.S. is doing wrong is continuing to invest in this fossil fuel technology, fossil fuel infrastructure. And that's what's happening in Minnesota right now at the Line 3. And so it's a very dramatic situation. There's people getting arrested, over 350 arrests so far in that area. And so I was able to interview somebody who is on the front lines, somebody who is literally right there where they're blocking the equipment from getting in and trying to slow the process of building this pipeline. And so I think we're ready to go to that interview. Hello and welcome to For a Green Future. If you could just repeat your name and...
Bonjour, I'm Earnest Joseph Oppegaard-Peltier III. I'm a water protector out here in northern Minnesota, mostly stationed out of Bemidji, Minnesota. And we're here today to talk about Enbridge Line 3 and how we can stop it.
The conflict there up in Minnesota is pretty dramatic. I mean, a lot of things are happening. People are getting arrested. There's confrontations, and this is a battle. This is a fight which has actually started years ago when this proposed Line 3 was first put forward by Enbridge. How long has this fight been going on?
Well, for Camp Life, we actually have been doing Camp Life since December of last year. But we've actually been engaging in this battle for, I want to say near a decade now. And that, this battle actually started with the Sandpiper project that we defeated, I want to say, about a decade ago.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you're fighting for? I mean, what is being threatened by this pipeline?
Well, I'm an Anishinaabe. I'm from the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa over in North Dakota, but we share treaty rights with the Red Lake Nation over here in Minnesota. We share treaty rights and treaty land. And why I'm involved is because northern Minnesota is prime camping area. Our woods, our wildlife, our bodies of water, Manuman, our blueberry patches, all of that. And my culture's history, my culture's practices, and my culture's way of living is at risk. And that's why I am involved. And that's part of the reason why I need everyone else to be involved. The second reason is this is northern Minnesota. It's going right across the Mississippi twice. And if anyone knows anything about the Mississippi, that sucker flows from north to south, going right through our grain belt of the United States, all the way down into New Orleans and emptying out in the Gulf of Mexico. So a leak on the Mississippi or one of its tributaries is going to bring this straight right into the farmlands of the United States, our major economic staple. Currently, the line itself, the current line and the proposed line, actually go through the farmlands of North Dakota and Minnesota, risking our main economic staples here in Minnesota.
And you said you mentioned the word manuman. That is what is commonly called wild rice. Is that correct?
Correct. That's our wild rice. That's our main staple for our foods and our what we eat in our meals. It's our bread and butter over here. And the drought plus Enbridge draining our bodies of water is going to make our harvest next year and this year be extremely, extremely low, where we'll have elders and low-income families struggling this year and not being able to receive their manuman from the tribes.
When you say wild rice, you really mean that this form of agriculture. It's not like you guys go out and use tractors to plant rice or dig paddies. This is truly coming straight from nature.
Yep, coming from Mother Earth. It grows naturally here in northern Minnesota in our bodies of water, and we go out there and we harvest on canoes and racing boats. And it's a huge cultural event that we do every year, and it's something that our communities look forward to because that is a free staple into our families and our homes.
Right, and it sounds like that's a resource more valuable than these tar sands that they want to put through this pipeline.
Oh, for sure. And this tar sands oil, that's not even for U.S. consumption. And, Canada takes pride in their economic trades with China, but the tar sands have been being sold to China for the last decade plus.
So really, this is the U.S. kind of being treated like a third world nation. We're just sort of the pass-through from Canada to China, but threatening our environment.
For sure. And, Canada doesn't even want this line through their land. Manitoba has a barring from the line from going through Manitoba. And their reasoning is it goes through their farmlands. Of course, why would we want to threaten our farmlands?
As you say, you've been fighting it for about a decade, and it went through the courts, and it went through the government processes, and still they persisted in pushing forward this project, which threatens so much. So what is happening now?
Well, I kind of want to correct you. All of the governmental processes are not completed, and they have not been completed, and we're waiting for the government side to get done. As we're waiting, Enbridge is hammering this through, trying to get it done before the first frost, because here in Minnesota, there is a local law that prevents their horizontal directional drilling when our lands, our soil is frozen. So they're trying to get this done as fast as possible, or else they're going to have to wait another year or apply for permits, MPCA. They have to get both of those permits from both of those governmental entities so they can actually drill during the winter time. Last year they tried to do that a few times, and I believe it was the DNR that denied those permit process because, the horizontal drilling process is not sound, and it does cause leaks, and it is, it's just hammering a pipe underneath with frack water, pretty much it's chemical water that they push to make the hole, and Minnesota, we value our water. Here in Bemidji, where I'm from, our second staple for our economy is actually our tourist trades. People come here every year for fishing, hunting, camping, and just their general vacations that they get from work. And we love our water. We don't want to threaten that.
Right. So I thanks for correcting me on that they're pushing this through, and they actually don't have all the government permits so far. But what?
Correct.
So now, what is happening? How are you protecting the land?
Right now, we have roughly 7 or 8 camps throughout northern Minnesota where we're holding space. There are ongoing legal battles still to this day where we're waiting for the courts to adjudicate what they're going to be doing with those cases. And we're trying to get this into the social media and trying to build national public pressure to put on Governor Walz and President Biden. President Biden, one of his main campaign planks that was the climate change. And if he's completely serious as he says he is, Enbridge Line 3, a Canadian pipeline for China's oil, should be on the top of his list to address.
And now I've seen that some people are actually sort of locking themselves to gates. And I saw a picture just this past week of 3 elderly women with their hands linked in pipes in front of a gate to try to physically stop the pipeline equipment from coming through.
Of course. We're battling corporate eco-terrorism from Canada. We're going to use means that we can do that are peaceful to get the job done. And stopping the work production and creation of this line is one of our main priorities. And when we actually stop the line, when they close down for a day, like you see when our elders and our allies are tying themselves to the machinery or the gates, it does shut down the work for the day, and those workers still get paid. This line has been the most expensive pipeline in American history to put through, and that's a lot to do with us being able to slow down the creation of this line. On top of that, when we slow down that line, those workers have a longer job to work for. And I know that's not a really great thing to talk about, but honestly, these are temporary jobs, roughly 3 to 4 months, and we've been able to spread it out 9 months. So these temporary jobs, those workers on the other side of the line, they should be actually very proud and excited that the more that we stop the line, the more that they can make their incomes.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. And I saw that there have been a fair number of arrests here. I saw that the head of the Rainforest Action Network was actually arrested and is now facing felony charge.
Yes, and we have elders that have been also recently arrested, and we had our the Name Lake camp. Currently, they were being sieged by the Hubbard County Sheriff's Department on our private land. The Hubbard County Sheriff's Department actually went on to our private easement and barricaded the actual people that live there, that own that site. They barricaded them in, refusing them to get out. And the Hubbard County Sheriff is on record saying, every time we let them loose, they cause havoc. It's just another, put the native on the reservation and lock them on there so they can't do anything. This is stereotypical racism. And when you think about it, morally and fundamentally, as a democratic government, we should all be opposing the police being sold to a private corporation, being paid by a private corporation, as we saw back in 2016 with the Dakota Access Pipeline, and then as we see today in northern Minnesota, as Enbridge has paid the Northern Lights Task Force, along with many counties, sheriff's departments, and police departments, for training gear just to beat the crap out of indigenous people of the area.
Yeah, I guess they're sort of turning our law enforcement into mercenaries.
Fundamentally, that's scary.
Yeah.
That leads down a really slippery slope, and we've been doing that for the last decade and a half. You know, we've seen reporters just at our Treaty People gathering a few weeks ago getting arrested. He was from the Los Angeles Times, and he was arrested, strip searched, and locked in the pen with everyone. This man is an elderly man. He's a United States journalist, and our cops are arresting them. It's ridiculous and it's shameful. And then it's also very, very, very scary on how they disregard our constitutional rights.
Yeah, I think shameful is a good adjective for the whole exercise of what Enbridge is doing here. I'm kind of disappointed by the coverage of this, the lack of coverage. To me, as a semi-journalist, a talk show host, this to me is one of the most dramatic stories happening in North America right now. And if you Google it, there's a lot of, and look for the news on it, there's a lot of things like in local papers there in Minnesota. But I think most people, like out here in Ohio, don't actually know that this is going on full tilt.
Full tilt. Majority of our camps have 10 to up to 50 some plus people camping there, and then during the weekends they get up to hundreds of people at camps. So this is going on full tilt, and we need more. And thank you for actually covering this, Miigwech, because you're right, we're not getting the national attention that this should be causing. This is a traumatic moment in history where our government is actively participating in the genocide of the Anishinaabe people.
Yes, well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing the story with us. And I hope that some of the people listening will react and will help you in your fight. So,
great.
And so how would you advise people to do that if they wanted to get involved?
Oh, sure. So, we're asking folks to come camp northern Minnesota. That's coming to our camps, or that's coming to just the regular campgrounds here in Minnesota, because, oh my gosh, they're so gorgeous. But if you're interested in coming camp northern Minnesota and getting involved with the Stop Line 3 movement, please check out stopline3.org/hub, and that's HUB. And that has the information where our camps are located, what to expect, what you're going to need, and just a little bit of a lowdown on what we're doing here.
All right. Well, so if anybody's thinking about what to do for summer vacation, I think this would be a vacation that you'll remember for the rest of your life.
I agree. And, our communities that we have on our camps, they are strong, they are welcoming, and they're caring communities. We offer 3 meals a day at our camps. There's laundry and shower amenities either on the camps or nearby the camps that are accessible for folks that want to come camp northern Minnesota. And if you're not comfortable putting your body on the line, there are umpteen amounts of different ways that you can help us and hold space here in northern Minnesota and not, get arrested, not get cited for trespassing. So I encourage everybody to come to northern Minnesota and come camp with us.
All right. Well, thank you very much again. And that was our interview. What did you think? Give us a call at 877-909-100.7 or send a text. Like I said in the interview, this is literally one of the most dramatic confrontations going on in America right now, and it is not getting any kind of coverage. We have in the show here, we have a little TV going with the CBS Sunday Morning, and they actually did a couple environmental stories, and that's nice, but they are conspicuously not covering this dramatic situation in Minnesota that involves thousands of people and has massive implications for the future of the United States of America, whether we're going to make it or not.
Their favorites environmentalist stories often seem to run along the lines of, some corporation planted a tree.
Yeah. Or it's something that's, nice and pretty. It doesn't call for any action by you. You just get to watch it and say, oh, that's nice. And, those stories are great, and we have them too. But you can't just do the nice, pretty stories and ignore the stories that have potential implications, because the one will do the other. And I just wanted to make two comments about the interview you just heard. One is a correction. Those permits that they're looking for have to come from the MDNR, Michigan Department of Natural Resources, and he mentioned MPCA, which is the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And the problem is, and what we've been seeing in the environmental movement more and more, is that these corporations put in for the permits and then do the actual damage before they get the permits. And then sometimes the permits get denied, but the pipeline's already in and the oil's flowing. Yeah. And it's like, oh, we're not going to stop now. That's crazy. And actually that's the situation he mentioned DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline. They actually have been denied some of the permits they need to run, but they're already running. So they're not stopping. And it's just flaunting law, basically. There's police there protecting the oil companies, but increasingly the oil companies themselves are flaunting law itself. So we're in a really crazy situation. You can't actually
put a corporation in jail, exactly. So
no, I mean, it would be nice in some of these situations. But all right, so that was our interview with Joseph Peltier, and now it's time to go on to hear from our wonderful sponsors. For a Green Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural conservation resources agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead people on outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every single day of the year. And there's a bunch of ways to find out what they're doing over there. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. Another is to go to their website, which is simply wcparks.org. And then, of course, they have an app. You can go to any app store and download the WC Parks. And they also are on all the other social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everyone you can name. And they have some nice, wonderful pictures. I actually had an experience on probably the most popular of the Wood County Park District's trails, which is the trail that goes from Bowling Green down to North Baltimore. We've talked about it before, the Slippery Elm Trail. My son and I spotted this white and black bird, and we were looking at it. We'd never seen one before, and we looked at. I tried to look it up on the internet when we got home. We should have taken a picture, because the closest bird we could find to it was a wood swallow from Indonesia.
Oh my! Well,
yeah,
that would be news.
Yeah, I wish we'd taken a picture, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some birder can call in and tell me, "Oh no, you just saw a I don't know, common
something that
black
looks
and white
like
bird.
a wood swallow from Indonesia, but is from around here."
Right. So let's see.
At least this hemisphere.
Right, but at this point, an expert birder. That's the closest thing I could come up with. But anyway, all kinds of adventures. If you go out to the park, you'll see cool things. The other source of revenue for a Green Future are our patrons. And these are people that have gone to patreon.com and done the amazing, wonderful thing of deciding to actually support a show like ours. And they've signed up for every month. They get a little bit taken out of their checking account, the amount that they can afford, the amount they choose. And it comes over to us, and this is what helps us keep on the air. And I got a text. Someone just asked me to please give the website that Joseph mentioned. And the short answer is you go to honortheearth.org, honortheearth.org. And then he had a sub thing on there, and I actually can't remember what the, slash is. But if you go to Honor the Earth and search there, you'll find where you can get this information that he was talking about. So it's honortheearth.org. Okay, so now it's time to hear from Rebecca. Hey, Rebecca, and you have a very sweet and tasty little thing to talk to us today about, and that's the mulberry.
Do kids still eat mulberries off of trees?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, just checking. I didn't know, whether that was still allowed.
Yeah.
People have gotten more cautious in some ways, for better or worse.
Well, actually, a lot of people don't know that you can eat them, and in fact, I've introduced a number of my neighbors to mulberries.
They did not have parents who were farm kids.
No, they're like, oh, you can eat those?
Yeah.
So, yes, you can eat them and enjoy them. So let's hear about mulberries.
Right, mulberries. Well, let's see. The mulberry is a plant in the genus Morus that's related to breadfruit and figs.
Uh-huh.
Which, I don't like figs. I don't know. They're really only good with cream cheese.
I didn't like them as a kid, but as a grown-up, I do. I don't know what happened there, but I like them.
So that's odd. But they're a tree, let's see, 10 to 20 meters tall, 33 to 66 feet. Roughly speaking, they're known for being fast-growing. On average, in the wild, they live about as long as a human, but some have been recorded living up to 250 years old. So there are a number of species. The most significant one probably for humans is Morus alba, the white mulberry, which is called the white mulberry because it's not remotely white, I guess.
The fruits start out as white.
Okay.
And,
That explains that.
Right, yeah.
I was mystified. Yeah.
And then when they're ripe, they are still whitish, but with a tinge. So, that's it.
Okay, well, there's also red mulberries, black mulberries. Generally speaking, they're in a couple of cultivated varieties. When they're mature, the berries are sort of white or pink. Mm-hmm. But really, there's a certain well-known saying about berries tasting better when they're darker. Literally true. Mm-hmm. Also, more antioxidants, more health benefits for the darker ones. So, the Morus alba, of course, is the one that supports the silkworms like to eat. Mm-hmm. It's native to China, but really it's widely cultivated and also sort of naturalized throughout the world. Tell Morus alba, it has these funny little sort of serrated teardrop leaves. Mm-hmm. Someday I have to do a segment called Mulberries and Blackberries Know the Difference. I'm confused about that, as are a lot of people, apparently. They're cultivated to nourish. They started making them to feed silkworms 47,000 years ago in China.
Wow.
The Greeks and Romans picked up on it. It was introduced to Europe in the 12th century and came to this continent first when Spain conquered Latin America in the 15th century. Mm-hmm. In North America, they're pretty widely distributed, and they hybridize a lot with the red mulberry to the point where they're not sure red mulberries are really a thing anymore. They've crossbred with Morus alba so much. They like mildly acidic, sandy or clay soil. They like it to be well drained, but it doesn't really have to be especially good soil. They grow a lot apparently in disturbed areas of soil, like by roadsides and things. So They kind of have, my one uncle used to say certain species like, rats, humans, mulberries, and Queen Anne's lace and chicory all like kind of,
yeah,
dairies where something bad has happened,
Right. They like where we've done stuff to the land. They like to show up. Yeah.
There you go. There's an ornamental variety that started out because they were trying to do them for monoculture for silkworms. Also, they have petalless flowers, which is interesting. And the most interesting thing about them morphologically or botanically speaking is they have the fastest pollen in the plant kingdom. Their pollen goes 380 miles per hour.
Whoa.
Apparently, like the stamen acts as like an actual, like a catapult, kind of.
Wow.
Which is what they're banned actually in a number of municipalities because they're blamed for raising hay fever because they just have a lot of visible pollen. We're not sure how many people are actually allergic to them though, but they're super significant apparently because of their health effects. You can eat the leaves stewed. They feed livestock with the leaves a lot, but also they use it to make tea.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you can apparently in traditional Chinese medicine they use the bark, the leaves, berries, and roots. Yeah, for medicine. They think it's good for cholesterol, obesity, heart disease, and very possibly cancer. Diabetes. It's good for lowering your blood sugar because it has a chemical in it that inhibits the production or the absorption of carbs, which carbs turn right into sugar for diabetics and wreak havoc right away. Also, it may do something to the central nervous system. They're not sure whether it's good or bad. Chinese medicine has believed all these things for millennia, and now suddenly the West is starting to do some studies which are showing there might be something to it. They're higher in protein than most berries. They have vitamin C, iron, fiber, K1, potassium, and vitamin E.
So back to the nervous system for a second. So are you suggesting there's such a thing as a mulberry high? Is that...
Not sure. Stay tuned for further developments.
Okay.
You want to be careful. You can get a tincture or sort of various forms of mulberry in health food stores. Want to be a little careful. Watch what it does to your digestion, because it does funky stuff to some people's digestion. Also, if you're allergic to birch, stay away from mulberries.
Oh, interesting.
Not approved for pregnant women or breastfeeding women or children because it's not been studied enough. They're not really sure. And let's see, what else did I have? Oh yeah, mostly just they probably protect your liver. They protect from hyperfermentation. That's kind of about it. The sap and leaves can cause whoopsie tummy in some people, and the sap is poisonous. There's no good reason to be drinking the sap. Just don't do that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting that so much of it is medicinal or edible, but not the sap.
Yeah. Ixnay on the apse. Don't do it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Rebecca. And
you're welcome.
We looked at that one because this is a record year for mulberry. The combination of heat and rain apparently. Because, as we're walking on trails and things, the ground underneath some of the mulberry trees is just solid purple.
Wow.
Because there's dropping so many.
Yeah, I still eat those. Like when I before my knees went out, when I used to go on a couple hours long walks around the city, our transportation system being a cruel joke, I would look forward to, I knew certain places and I'd keep an eye out for others because you find yourself a mulberry tree, you got a little mid-walk snack,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because people need more reasons to think that I'm crazy.
Well, just think of it as maintaining your foraging skills.
There you go. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks very much, Rebecca. And our guest, unfortunately, has not yet called or texted in. I'm sure we'll get Colette Atkins on next week, or she may still call in, but there's certainly time and definitely reason for you to call in.
Indeed. Call us.
at
begging.
877-909-1007, or you can send a text to 419-973-5841. And, in a live radio show, when a guest doesn't show, that kind of leaves a 15-minute hole in the programming. So we would be very grateful if someone called in right now. All right. But on to ecological news. I have one major story that is not being reported on the mainstream media that, if you're an ecologist, if you're an environmentalist who studies the science of ecology, you come across like graphs and charts and things. And this is one of those situations where a tiny little squiggle on a graph has incredibly huge implications for the whole world. And this is looking at the monthly mean CO2 levels at the Mauna Observatory, which has been measuring the CO2 levels in the atmosphere for going on, a long time now, about 100 years. And the graph, if you look at that graph, if you follow it back, the trend, of course, is upward, as we all know. But what happens every year is in April, there's a peak, because after April, then the plants in the northern hemisphere start putting out their leaves and start absorbing billions and billions of tons of
saving our bacon again.
CO2,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it goes up steadily after, in the fall when we lose all our leaves and the plants start dying, keeps going up steadily till April, and then at April it peaks and the CO2 levels start dropping again. And of course, the average level, as I've said, goes up. So it's like a jagged line going up. Unfortunately, and this is the thing that I wanted to report on that I haven't seen anywhere else, this year we did not have an April peak.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, this year it goes April, and then May actually goes up a little bit, and then June isn't the sharp drop-off that you usually expect to see. June is just a little tiny bit of a drop-off. It's pretty much a plateau, which could mean, I'm not a scientist. I am a talk show host, so I have more leeway than a scientist.
There we go.
A scientist wouldn't say this because they want to protect their jobs. They want to protect their reputation.
Scientists really hate to be wrong about anything. So if you say nothing, it's a good way not to be wrong.
Right. And scientists also always couch their things in, we could be wrong this way, we could be wrong that way, we could be off. But as a non-scientist who like to read graphs and a talk show host, I can say we may have cooked our bacon here. This might be the sign that we've crossed a line that we can't come back over, because what it means is that the amount of carbon being put in the air is actually overwhelming the mechanism of the plants in North America absorbing the carbon out again.
See, I'm finding, especially when it was really hot a little while, last week, which is supposed to be again, I think, later in the week.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I'm having some trouble breathing. I've never been diagnosed with asthma or anything, but I'm finding that I have to sort of sit in just the right position and arch my back in order to be able to breathe when it's really, really hot.
Yeah, heat and humidity can actually affect respiration. So
I've had that happen maybe I think once or twice when I was a kid, and it was very hot in the summer. But it didn't happen long enough for often enough for to actually go to a doctor about it. Yeah,
right. And so we reported last week on Lytton, British Columbia, where they had the record heat 3 days in a row, and then the fourth day the city burned to the ground. I have to say, we all kind of live in Lytton, because this is the same planet, and the same thing that happened there in British Columbia is projected for down here. It's just happening faster the closer you get to the poles, which is...
I saw an article, I didn't read all of it, but it was a thing about the potential impact of money and social class. Apparently people in California and in other places are starting to ask, well, gee, should I move someplace else? Mm-hmm. And that's the people with money. I mean, East Los Angeles is not going to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. No, true. And yeah, the idea that the people with money can flee the hotter areas, but
and also when they do that, what's going to happen to housing in the less affected areas? What if they all come to Toledo because things aren't as bad here? I'm going to be living in a tent for starters.
Yeah, I mean, we are, because of our proximity to the lakes, we're somewhat protected for a while, but
right.
Unfortunately, there's no permanent safe place. There's just various levels, various rates of becoming uninhabitability. So the question is not, where should I flee? So I'm amongst the last to survive. No, that's not the question. The question
it sort of belongs your suffering potentially.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how that's going to play out.
No, the question we should all be asking is, what the heck do we do to prevent this catastrophe?
Yeah,
and of course, we have all the answers. We have, we had Mark Jacobson on a few months ago, electrification of our transportation industry, switching over to things like geothermal heating to stop putting natural gas in the air. Often we have to report on this show that what's happening is legislatively, particularly the Republicans, but the Democrats are not completely innocent on this either. Legislation is being put forward to prevent us from doing the very things we need to do to survive.
Yeah.
And, the purpose of a democracy is not to have a tiny minority, because this is a minority. Most Americans believe in global warming. Most Americans want more wind and solar. Most Americans want to do what we need to do to survive as a society. But there's this small minority, this obnoxious minority, as I call them, and increasingly they're using government to force suicidal policies on the rest of us.
We're right in the place where Easter Island was, where they were when they were down to the last 2 or 3 trees, and they were like, maybe somebody said, "Gee, we should leave these alone and not, make any of those, use them to make any more of those giant heads."
Right.
And somebody else was like, because then for one thing, they couldn't fish anymore after they couldn't build boats, which is why their civilization crashed and burned hard.
Yeah, that, and they also had there was an island off the island that had birds, that was covered in birds, and they would every year harvest a bunch of those birds to eat.
Right.
And it looks like in addition to cutting down all their trees, they also ate all those birds.
Oy, oy, oy. So, yeah, suddenly there was a lot less to eat. But, somebody looked at that situation and it was like, well, we could do something that will help us survive. Nah, let's just cut down the trees.
Yeah, it's an often repeated factor in history. In fact, most civilizations, that's their fate. They grow to a certain point, they reach the limit of their natural resources, and they collapse. But, we don't have to follow that pattern. We have, the knowledge. We know how to grow food without dumping tons of pesticides on the ground. We know how to move ourselves, how to heat our homes, how to do all these things that we need to do without putting carbon in the air. It's just a question of is our society agile enough? Is our society smart enough to make this change? And again,
now is the time to pivot like a madman.
Right. And so,
like a little ballerina.
So seeing this graph, it actually made me think of 1979 because, this is a boomer tale here. I'm a boom Xer, which means I'm like at the very beginning of the Generation X and at the very end of the baby boomers both. I'm in that 2-year overlap. And once upon a time, kids, we used to have something called the Sunday paper that everybody read. And in those papers, typically you'd get this one section that would have like really interesting articles about science and environment and ecology and so forth. And what happened through the 70s was there were increasingly strict environmental laws being passed. The Republicans and Democrats actually competed with each other because they would say, hey, we passed this bill for even cleaner water, because people would vote based on, how well they were protecting the environment. And there was a huge battle, decades-long battle, to clean up car exhaust. Because when
it was super dirty.
It was. When I was a lad, back in the 60s, if you had to take a trip on the turnpike, you just knew you'd get stuck at some point behind somebody with nasty exhaust. Everybody in the car would start feeling sick. And, car sickness was a thing. You just accepted that if you were on a long trip, somebody was going to get sick. You'd have to pull over and they'd be throwing up on the side. We just lived with that.
Right, yeah. It was just what you did.
But all through the 70s, more and more regulations were put in place, and car exhaust got down to the point where it was just, quote unquote, just carbon dioxide and water, pretty much. No more sulfur, no more lead, no more big billowing clouds of blue smoke.
Which is good as far as it went.
Right, and so we were all proud of ourselves, and then that's when I first learned about global warming. It was a big, long article in a Sunday supplement saying, oh, just the CO2 is enough to cause us problems. And I've been working on it since then to the extent I'm able, being a member of the Green Party, pushing, whenever I can, I push for more and more environmental regulations. But this little squiggle on the graph is showing me this hasn't been enough. We have not been doing enough, despite the fact that most people want more. So what we need is more democracy, more people stepping up, more pressure on our legislators. We can't let them slide just because we agree with them on this or that. The environmental issues have to transcend politics, because otherwise, I'm telling you now, otherwise we're in for a huge crash. And it doesn't matter if you live on the West Coast or if you've moved to Toledo, or if you looked at the graphs and say, oh, this part's going to stay more calm, for a little longer. There will be no safe place. There's nowhere to actually evacuate to long term. So that's that's our big news story for the day. And unfortunately, our guest has still not called in or contacted us, so we can go on to some of our backup news stories.
All right.
This is a story from phys.org. The Northeast Canyon and Seamounts Marine National Monument. There's a mouthful, but that's 3.1 million acres off the East Coast that were set aside in the Obama administration for protecting sea life. The Trump administration decided, oh, hey, we're just going to open this up to fishing. Yes, it's a national monument, and fishing was banned in the Obama administration, but we can have the fish and the monument, and it won't hurt the monument to catch all the fish. And so,
well, it might.
Yeah, and so they've done a big study, and guess what?
It's hurting it, isn't it?
Yes, catching all the fish actually hurts the monument. So Trump was completely wrong about that, and the report just came out on July 9th. University of Connecticut released a big, huge, comprehensive report that once again showed what common sense would dictate, and that is if you catch all the fish, you hurt the environment.
Then there's no more fishes,
right.
For starters.
Catch all the fish, there's no more fish. And of course, the ironic thing, as we've reported before, is that if you set aside these protected areas where you don't fish, the net result is actually more fish.
Yeah.
Because
priming the pump.
Right. Once they've got a protected area, they regenerate, they produce more fish that can live in that area. They spread out trying to colonize the outside of the protected area. And you ended up with literally millions of tons of more fish than if you had been doing what Trump has had us do, which is kill the golden goose, which is harvest the fish inside the monument. So that's an interesting story. And of course, the national story that are being put out in the national media is the idea of the record heat that were happening over the West right now.
Ignore that.
Yeah, and if anybody has a personal anecdote or knows somebody who's living in one of these areas that's experiencing record heat, give us a call and tell us what.
I guess there's just wildfires and drought in California and a lot of the West.
Yep. And the Death Valley just this past week,
130
reported the record high temperature for North America, 130 degrees. And you can't just fry an egg on the sidewalk when it's 130. You can burn your eggs. If you don't watch them, they'll actually burn. And so for those of you who like to cook on the sidewalk, but it's and so see, if I were let's say running a paper like the Washington Post or someplace like that, I would connect the record heat story back to the NOAA story that I just reported on the graph. I would mention, make that connection that the record high amounts of CO2 correspond to the record high temperatures that we're having. And so, once again, the government's not doing it for us. And one thing I forgot to mention in the Line 3 story is that the Biden administration has actually intervened on the side of Enbridge to fight one of the lawsuits that they filed to try to stop the pipeline from going through. So once again, our government is doing the wrong thing, so it's up to us to do the right thing as much as we can. So I'll leave you folks with that. And so this is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
Thanking you all for listening and sticking with us for this hour. And telling you to keep working for that green future. 'Cause
Indeedy.
it's either a green future or no future. So we are signing off.
Bye-bye.
I don't want them nukes.